Hi, I thought I'd do a video about eye contact now that I'm feeling better after my cold. Eye contact's a really big deal when it comes to autism. Not necessarily so much from the autistic person's point of view, although it does affect our lives, but more it's one of those famous things. It's one of the famous aspects of autism that everyone knows about and everyone likes to mention and talk about. When they want to try and prove that they know something about autism. So I thought I'd try and kind of break through the possible misinformation, the misconceptions and things, and try and get down to the nitty gritty about what it really is about eye contact that can be a problem. So first of all, obviously, eye contact is in Western cultures. I think kind of Western cultures derived from European, cultures. So everywhere in Europe, America, Australia, Canada, etc. I think eye contact is really, really important for neurotypical people. That, as far as I can gather, and I sound like I'm talking about like an alien species, but as far as I can gather, it seems to be about trust and kind of being able to, feeling like you're being listened to, like you're being taken seriously, and all this kind of thing. Which is fine, if that's how people work, that's how people work. But it's worth bearing in mind that eye contact isn't necessarily seen as a good thing, across the neurotypical world. That there are cultures where eye contact seen as aggressive or rude or presumptuous or any of those things. Not least in Britain, of course, where the wrong kind of eye contact in a pub on a Saturday night can lead you to getting punched in the face repeatedly. You catch someone's eye in the pub who doesn't like that kind of thing, and goodness me, you can be in all kinds of trouble. So, it swings and roundabouts. It's not a blanket good thing, eye contact, as much as people like to say that it is. But obviously, autistic people aren't massive fans of it. And I think we see this as a deficit, don't we? We see that as being, normal people use eye contact, whereas autistic people don't. And therefore, that is something that, it's yet another thing that autistic people can't do or don't want to do or can't cope with, or whatever it might be. And that may well be the case, but I always think it's worth trying to think about it in a different way, and to consider that it's more like, okay, so neurotypical people have this habit of looking at each other's eyes when they're talking to each other. It's fine, okay, but it's not right. Not inherently, there's no rule that anywhere written in the stars that says that eye contact is the way that it has to be. I mean, you could argue that there's the social rules of Western Europe and such like, have it that you must maintain eye contact at all times, but they're arbitrary. They're not absolutely immovable. And there are plenty of social rules from the past that we've come to realise are just damn silly. We don't worry about them anymore. So I just think it's interesting to think about the fact that autistic people don't maintain eye contact in a conversation isn't necessarily a deficit thing, like a problematic thing. It's simply a difference, and it's not our fault that some other people like to maintain eye contact in a conversation. I mean, ideally, of course, we'd end up in a situation whereby, let's say you're a neurotypical and you're talking to someone and they don't maintain eye contact with you. Wouldn't it be nice if we lived in a world where, on experiencing that, your first thought is, oh, it's okay, they're probably just autistic, or something along those lines. Like, your first thought is assumes positivity. Like, it's this person isn't trying to be rude, they're not being unpleasant, they might just not like eye contact, which is fine. That's fine. It doesn't hurt anyone. That, I think, is what we eventually, in a billion years or something, might actually manage to get into the situation of being in. But that, I think, is where we need to end up. But anyway, so what is it about eye contact then that autistic people don't like? Obviously, we feel like we have to do it because neurotypical people around us do it all the time. They seem to do it naturally. They seem to know exactly how to do it. It's habitual for them, I think. It's not a case that they know how to do it. They just do it, and they all do it in the same kind of way. It's a habit. And autistic people don't have that. They haven't got that instinctual or inbuilt. I don't really know what the deal is with it, but we haven't got that bit in our brains that tells us how to do that. Okay, it's missing, if you like to look at it in a negative way, or it's just not there, and we've got other things going on instead, which is a bit more of a positive way of looking at it. But because we know that we're meant to do it, as with most things for autistic people, certainly autistic people who spend an awful lot of energy trying to kind of fit in and not appear too different, because we know we should be doing it, well, we force ourselves to do it. In the same way as somebody in an English person in Germany might force themselves to speak German. The only difference being that an English person in Germany, bravely attempting the language, will probably be viewed as quite, a German person may well be quite sort of, I don't know, they might say, oh, good for you, good. I'm happy to see that you're trying, even if it's not going very well. You're giving it a good go, and you're trying to speak the language, and that is deserving of applause of its own. Not massive amounts, but yeah, good for you. With autism and eye contact, it doesn't work that way. Obviously, an autistic person can maintain eye contact at great personal cost, and no one gives a damn. No one cares. No one's going to say like, oh yeah, well done, fair play to you for trying to fit in with the rest of the world. You're not going to get that. I mean, partially because that would, I suppose, be quite patronising, but secondly because people just don't think like that. They don't realise the tremendous effort and cost that goes into these things for the autistic population. Because they haven't got a similar experience that they can build it on a lot of the time. So an autistic person in a conversation with a neurotypical person. Now, the neurotypical person will be flitting their eyes at the autistic person's eyes, like directly into the pupils, it seems, on a kind of frequent yet random basis, as far as I can tell. The eyes come and go. They're not always looking. That would be odd. They kind of come and go, come and go, come and go, come and go, like this. As I say, in a very kind of random way. I don't know whether it's linked to what's being said, or whether there's some kind of unconscious clock thing in your head which tells you, now look away. But we try to emulate that. Okay, some autistic people try, or don't try, or can't try, and you get the starey thing. Where some people can just like mistime it and just look into the eyes of the other person for just that little bit too long. I think that's probably a lesson that nearly all autistic adults certainly will have had and learned in their life, from childhood. I think it's probably fair to say all autistic people will have a memory of that one time where they just looked for too long into someone else's eyes, and the awkwardness kind of spills out of control. So we make those mistakes. We're very conscious. We don't want to do it for too long. We don't know how too long is. We don't know how long too long is. We've got no idea. I mean, because it's different in every situation, in every conversation. God knows. In a particular conversation, too long might be 3 seconds. In another conversation, it might be 5 seconds. We have no way of knowing, so we're already up against it, to be honest. But equally, we don't want to look away too much either, because we know from our experience of being immersed in neurotypical culture that looking away from someone is untrustworthy, isn't it? If you look away from someone too much, if your eyes move away from the eyes of the other person, that's shifty, isn't it? And that suggests that you're up to no good. Now you imagine that. You imagine feeling like your natural... You know how resting bitch face people must feel? That their natural facial expression is one that makes them look like they're bloody horrible people. Well, for autistic people, our natural mode of conversation means that we come across as untrustworthy and shifty. It's not great. It's not a fantastic position to be in, especially considering how meticulous with the truth a lot of autistic people really are, because the value, because truth is so important to us, because we're so bad at identifying lying in other people. So we tend to value it quite highly. And yet, we're always coming across as shifty and untrustworthy. That's a horrible situation to be in. No one wants that. No one wants to feel like every time they have a conversation with someone, they're going to be thinking, "Oh, he's not looking at me properly. He must be up to something crazy. Maybe he's, plotting something, or maybe he hates me." We don't want to feel that way. We don't want to feel like we're being judged in that way. But we are, because that's how the culture works. So we try our very best to not stare for too long and not stare too little, and just do that flicky thing. But I think it probably always comes across as artificial. Always. Because like a lot of neurotypical habits and traits, I don't think they're perfectly mimicable. I think even the most adept autistic person, who can kind of walk unknown amongst the ranks of the neurotypical, can really genuinely match exactly how it is for a neurotypical person. I don't know why that is. And if they try, it's exhausting in its own way. Now, this video has gone on for ages already. I do talk, don't I? Go on. 11 minutes in. I told myself I'd try and do a 10-minute video. It's looking like this might be a 15-minuter. I do apologise. If you don't want to listen any further, then just turn it off. I'm not forcing you to listen. But I just want to talk a bit about how eye contact feels for me. And also a little bit about how I know it feels for some other autistic people, from conversation with them and all the rest of it, and just general kind of understanding. So we've got this problem that we're trying to emulate it, that we're trying to do it to fit in. But there is a reason why we don't do it, you see. I mean, it doesn't come naturally to us, but I think the reason it doesn't come naturally to us is because we don't like it. I think that's fair to say that a lot of autistic people, if not all of them, don't like eye contact. It feels extraordinarily intimate, I think is probably the best way to put it. Like really, really too much. I think that's why autistic people can be entirely okay with eye contact with their very best friends, for example, or their partners and their children, because the intimacy is appropriate there. Intimacy generally, not like sexual intimacy, but just general intimacy is okay in those situations with those people. But with anyone that isn't in those categories of, close friends, family, or partner, eye contact just feels bizarre. It feels like going to the toilet in front of them, or farting openly in front of them, or having no clothes on in front of them, things like that. It's just far too much. It's too familiar. It's simply not something that we feel confident or comfortable in doing. But of course, we have to do it, in like work situations and things like that. And that's when things get really weird, because it's almost like we've got neurotypicals and autistic people, neurodivergent people, have got two completely different frames of references for what eye contact's for. It's like for neurotypical people, eye contact is a way of communicating that you are not a threat, I suppose, or that you are friendly, or you are trustworthy. Whereas I think for neurodivergent people, eye contact is a means of indicating real closeness. Like it's a method of showing that you genuinely, really, really trust that person a great deal. And I think, arguably both of those attitudes are perfectly reasonable. They're different, but they're reasonable. They just don't interact very well. And it just leads to this constant problem. It's like, two cultures clashing. But the difference is, and this is where I can get a little bit cross, the difference is that autistic people, because we're in the minority, although not a very small minority, probably quite a big minority when it really comes down to it, we accept the whole eye contact thing. We try to be like neurotypicals. And even though it's, unpleasant for us, but neurotypicals don't do the same back. Not really. Like I said, neurotypicals aren't going to assume if you don't maintain eye contact that you're autistic. They'll just assume that you're some kind of arsehole who can't be trusted. So there's one thing. That's not fair. That's not cool. But there we are. That's how it is. Secondly, if people know that you're autistic, generally speaking, and certainly in my experience, that doesn't mean that they'll stop making eye contact with you at all. It carries on. It's not like a bad thing. It's not like stop looking at me. It just shows the imbalance of power, that you've got autistic people desperately trying to fit in all the time and change how they behave and kill themselves almost. But I mean, I use that as an exaggeration, but God, it's horribly accurate. Hurt ourselves to try and fit in and to try and fit with the neurotypical world. But the same doesn't happen the other way around. Not even close. Not even close. Okay? So there's something to end on, a really cheerful thought there. I think, what we need to get to gradually is a situation where a little more compromise is made. Where there's an understanding that there are a group of people on this planet whose brains work very differently. Not in a bad way, it's just different. And they're all around you. They're everywhere, these people. And they're in pain a lot of the time because they have to cope with a world that's not designed for them. So what we need to see is a compromise to allow this other brand of person, if you like, this other neurotype, this other type of brain that exists on Earth in the human species to coexist in something resembling harmony, I think is what we need to be aiming for. It just feels like right now we are a long way away from that. And quite frankly, how many battles are there of this type that need to be won? I mean, it's not just neurotypes, it's gender, it's race, it's sexuality, it's everything. There's so many ways that we can be different to the norm that make us inferior or not be able to access what the world has to offer. But there we are. This has now gone on for nearly 20 minutes, so I do apologise. But hopefully these are useful, these videos. I'm going to do some more now that my cold's gone over the next few days, so stay tuned for that. Obviously, follow my Patreon. That's where I put everything now. Patreon. That's where I plonk everything now. I mean, if you can help, then that would be really awesome. I've got a kind of pipe dream at the moment that I might be able to go part-time at work next year if possible, but I can't do that at the moment, financially. But if people are using that platform to help them, that makes that potentially doable. So I mean, I'm tremendously grateful for the people that already have. But I will keep going. I will keep doing this, possibly forever. So there we are. Okay, bye bye.